I heard footsteps around my house. It sounded like army boots.
I love stories like this. Ghost stories.
I was deadly scared. A lot of torture places, a lot of people die there.
We heard a voice.
About places we're not supposed to go. We're warned not to go. But I'm no ghost hunter. The fear, the superstition, always hides a bigger story. A true story. What really happened here? And if you knew, would you still go there? My name is Robert Joe. I'm a blogger and urban explorer. My investigations had led me to Myanmar, the country once known as Burma. For decades, it had been closed to outsiders, a land filled with mystery and urban legends. But one place stood out more than anywhere else: Magina, a small town near the border with China, with a rundown, desolate feel. It seemed here, everyone had a supernatural tale.
My name is Mary. I am from Tatkong in northern Magina. I live behind number 6 high school. In 2008, something strange happened at my house. One night, I went to bed. I heard footsteps around my house. It sounded like army boots. It stopped beside my bed. I was scared. Another night, I went to bed. The house was quiet. I heard the noises again. He looked like a military officer. Soldiers were kneeling around him as though paying him respect. He raised his head up slowly. He looked sad. And then his face changed into something ugly. He looked like a corpse. Whenever I thought about them, I felt so sorry for them.
Who were the soldiers in Mary's story? My theory is that places which attract large numbers of paranormal sightings often have something hidden in their past. Had something happened in the school's history, something with a military connection. I set out to investigate the location of the sighting.
After walking around the city, I think I have found it. The angle is slightly different, but you can tell this is the Dakgong High School. Now, Mary's house is apparently at the back of the high school, so I'm gonna jump over take a look and see if I can find her house.
I hoped I would find something that might point to past military activity there.
Okay, it's getting really dark now, so I think it's time to switch to night vision. I mean, it looks like a pretty typical school. I think this might be the house. It looks surprisingly new. Let me get up close.
This was the spot where Mary's ghostly officer was said to have appeared.
Looks like a garden of sorts, and then that's it. There's no other houses. This must be it. Let me knock. They might be asleep. Probably not good if I disturb them. Oh, there's something here. Some sort of roofed over structure. This looks like a well. Let's see how far down it goes. The pulley mechanism too is really quite rusted and old. This looks exactly like the type of structure that might have been built a long time ago and has been maintained decade after decade.
My visit to Takong High School didn't reveal any clues as to what had happened there. I could find no military connection in its past. I headed out. I wanted to delve deeper into the residents of Takong's belief in ghosts and the supernatural.
Ingolaba, I was told that this was a haunted house. Okay, Jesube.
I hoped that their stories might link me back to something about Takong's history. Yet wherever I went, I was greeted with the same responses.
And have you heard of any weird stories in this area, like strange, spooky stories? No? Okay. Jesube.
With no luck on Magina's streets, I decided to visit one of the local spiritual mediums. I hoped she could give me insight into the local belief system.
This ritual you just performed, what is that about?
I help people who are afraid because they have been haunted by ghosts. For example, they may have noticed ghosts playing with the lights or opening and closing doors. If family members are trapped in the spirit world, I pray for them to set them free.
What does it mean that there are so many stories about ghosts and hauntings here in Magina? What's going on with the Takong school?
Ghosts will haunt or gather at one location if many people have died there in the past. In that place, lots of people died and they became ghosts.
Having spoken with the spiritual medium, I've gotten a pretty good sense of the local superstitions and beliefs about ghost stories. As is often the case, they're related to stories of death and human remains. She also alluded to some dark, tragic event in the history of Magina, and that's the story I'm going to get to the bottom of.
I was getting somewhere at last. Someone had linked the current hauntings in Takong with a historical event. I decided to look into another story from the area, hoping that would yield something from Takong's past.
My name is Bill.
I was born and raised in Myitkyina. I live close to Takong. 40 years ago, it was around 2 a.m. Everyone was asleep. I woke up because I heard noises that sounded like gunfire. I saw flashes of light. I felt I was being haunted. I saw a shadow that looked like a soldier holding a rifle. The house across from ours is haunted.
Piao's story had happened 40 years ago, yet shared similar images with Mary's. This time there was also a mention of battle noises and flashing lights. My theory about the military connection was growing stronger. Piao's house was near Takong School. I headed there, desperate to know more about the dark events the spiritual medium had mentioned.
This is the place where lots of soldiers died. The spirits of the dead haunt this area.
What makes you think that soldiers died here?
When we built our house, my husband and I found guns, bullets, and bombs.
Could I see what you and your husband dug up?
I don't have those anymore. Some I sold and some I threw away.
Piao wanted to show me other neighbors who had also found things buried under their homes.
That house, they found human remains. That house also found human bones and bullets.
So I'd found my dead, and it seemed they were everywhere in this neighborhood. Piao had given me another intriguing lead. Most of the bones had been found by researchers at none other than Takong School. But whose remains were they? I had come to Myitkyina in northeastern Myanmar to investigate a concentration of reported ghost sightings in the village of Takong. Those stories turned into something real: wartime loot and human bones. More were said to be buried within the school grounds. It seemed like I could be dealing with some sort of mass grave. I headed back to Takong School, the first place I had investigated. I had been told researchers working there had unearthed human remains. I wanted to know who these dead soldiers were and how they had died.
So researchers actually came to your house?
They sent some of their team and requested permission to look around my house. I wanted to help, so I let them look. They started to dig around my house, over here and over there as well. They didn't find anything at first, but when they dug in that spot, they found human remains.
Did they say anything about who the remains belonged to?
The researchers told me the remains belong to soldiers. I've been told those soldiers might be the ones who died during the war.
The military connection to the ghost sightings had been confirmed. Residents of Dakong believe the ghosts belong to dead soldiers buried in the area. But why would soldiers be buried under the grounds of a school? To get the answers, I first needed to find out what wars took place here. My next stop was the local university's archives to search for battle records from the area.
Going through the archives, it's clear that there is conflict around the entire Kachin state between the independence rebels as well as the Myanmar government.
But then Mary and Piao had lived in the area for over 50 years. Neither remembered any battles inside the town. It must have happened before 1960, and that meant World War II. Historians describe the conflict in Burma as one of the longest and bloodiest of the entire Second World War.
In northern Burma, on the road to China, is the strategic Jap-held city of Myitkyina.
In December 1941, the Japanese invasion of Burma began, with air attacks and ground troops crossing into Burma from Thailand. The Japanese controlled almost all of Burma by May 1942. It took the Allies 3 years to recapture the country. The war came to an end in August 1945. In all the fighting, over 140,000 lives were lost. I searched for a battle that might connect the bones buried in Dakong to World War II.
Battle of Tanggu, Battle of Yanjiao, Battle of Myanmar.
The Battle of Myanmar was described as crucial to the effort to recapture Burma from the Japanese, and also one of the bloodiest. As the Japanese held on to the city, a fierce siege had taken place. I wanted to know who had died here and why they lay here forgotten for nearly 70 years. It was a military tradition to bury the dead, to honor them. I searched online for World War II cemeteries devoted to the dead from the Battle of Myanmar. Maybe finding those who were remembered could lead me to those that weren't. My first stop was a Japanese-built memorial. That led me to a temple honoring the Japanese soldiers.
So I'm not sure about everything on this plaque, but we can get some numbers of Japanese soldiers who died. 1,270 in one city, 3,000 in another, and 3,400 right here in Myanmar. So we know that Japanese soldiers died here, but it doesn't say where they're buried.
I spoke with the person in charge.
Where did the Japanese soldiers die?
In Myitkyina during the war, some of the Japanese died on the road to Tan Lan Ok. Some died in Lampo village.
Do they have their own cemetery then, or?
They do not have their own cemetery. The Japanese came here and took their remains back.
I decided the missing soldiers couldn't have been Japanese. It turned out they had taken their dead home. That left the Allies.
I'm also looking for this. It's the Allied cemetery. Do you know where this is?
I've heard the Allied cemetery is situated near the outskirts of the town.
It appeared the Japanese dead were accounted for. The Allies were a collection of British, American, and colonial soldiers. I wasn't sure what answers this next cemetery would hold.
I'm in front of what I'm certain is the World War II Allied cemetery. The mountain ranges match this picture, but I don't see any crosses or a flag. I'm gonna have to take a look around and make sure I'm at the right spot. You can see all around me is a flat expanse of field, nothing except for the mountains in the background and the road that I just came from. This would be a perfect place to have a cemetery, and yet nothing, no trace. I don't see any concrete, anything that might have held a flagpole. Something very obviously could have been here, but it's not here anymore.
It was weird. I was sure the location was the exact spot. How could a cemetery have disappeared?
Well, this is strange. The Americans took their bodies either home or to cemeteries in the Philippines. The British moved theirs to cemeteries in Yangon. And the Japanese also repatriated their bodies. And yet, researchers have dug up bodies. So whose bodies were they?
I had come across unmarked graves of soldiers in a village in northern Myanmar. My investigation had revealed the remains were linked to battles between Japanese and Allied troops here in World War II. It seemed that the American, British, and the Japanese had repatriated or honored their dead in military cemeteries. So where did the soldiers being dug up come from, and who were they? Mary, the paranormal witness, had a contact, someone who had worked with the researchers. If he was helping exhume bodies, he might have some clues as to who they were.
I'm trying to find out about soldiers that are buried in Dakong. I understand you were working with researchers that were here to recover bodies.
These are what we dug out. This helmet, this knife, and lots of bullets. There was a battle here in Machina.
And then he revealed why the researchers contacted him.
My father became a soldier in China in 1936. In World War II, my father had military training in India. In 1944, he fought the Japanese all the way until he got to Machina. Lots of Chinese soldiers died fighting alongside the Allies in the battle. The researchers came to find the remains of Chinese soldiers who died in the Battle of Machina.
I had been looking in the wrong direction. These were Chinese soldiers buried under Dakong School.
And why did the Allies and the Japanese have memorials, but this Chinese effort seems lost to history? It looks like I'm going to have to go to China to find out more about what happened to them. After a couple of flights, I made it to Tongchong, China, and I'm here at the Yunnan War Memorial Museum. I'm going to try and figure out why the Chinese military was in Myanmar.
This is how I'd expected Chinese war dead to be remembered. Huge mausoleums, heroic sculptures. The grandeur made my question burn stronger. Why had there been so many unmarked graves in that village in Myanmar? The museum paid tribute to military operations around Yunnan province during the Japanese occupation in World War II. For 3 decades, Duan Shangkui and his team have been collecting thousands of items related to China's conflict with Japan.
The Chinese Expeditionary Force marched into Burma with around 100,000 soldiers. The first entry aimed to ensure the safety of the Yunnan-Burma road for safeguarding the transport of military supplies.
What was so important about this road?
The Japanese government was waging total war against China. Nearly all the country's maritime ports were controlled by the Japanese army.
This is the Battle of China.
The only route left was the Yunnan-Burma Road, where international military supplies continued to be transported into Kunming.
By thousands, by tens of thousands, by hundreds of thousands, they toiled at the back-breaking task of carving this desperately needed supply line out of the reluctant mountains. As soon as it was completed, the road went into immediate service.
The fate of a nation rested on a single lifeline for the first time in history.
The blood plasma of new supplies flowed steadily over China's lifeline to the sea.
So this is it. This is why the Chinese were in Myanmar. This is the Yunnan-Burma Road, and the Chinese Expeditionary Forces were sent to protect it, stretching over 1,000 kilometers from Kunming down into Burma. So what happened then? Were they successful?
Out of 100,000 soldiers, only 46,000 returned. The first entry was really a tragic expedition, which ended in our failure.
I searched the basement archives for more information on the Chinese Expeditionary Force. It was here that many of the items relating to the Burma campaign were housed. It seemed the defeat in 1942 wasn't the end for the Chinese Expeditionary Force. In October 1943, the Chinese Expeditionary Force, together with British and US troops, launched a counterattack. China's ability to split the might of the Japanese army was seen as vital to the overall war effort.
Together with the British Commonwealth, fight side by side.
Eventually, the Japanese in Burma were defeated.
Myitkyina airstrip is an important stop on the air supply route to China's. It is now in Allied hands.
The recapture of one city in particular, Myitkyina, was crucial, paving the way for overland supply to be resumed. I'd uncovered an almost forgotten story. Over 100,000 Chinese troops, an expeditionary force, fought for years to keep their country alive. Only half made it home. I needed to find out where over 50,000 dead soldiers lay and answer the question why some had ended up under a school in Myitkyina. I had traveled from Myanmar to China, chasing the story of the Chinese Expeditionary Force. A 100,000-strong army who had helped the Allies defeat the Japanese in Burma in World War II. The mystery now, why their remains were being found in unmarked graves in Myitkyina.
I'm here at a military graveyard in Tongchung, and I'm going to try and discover a connection between this place and the remains that were discovered in Burma.
Most of the dead buried here had fallen in the battles of Yunnan province. However, some were said to be those who had been repatriated from Myanmar.
You get a really good sense of the number of people buried here. Checking out this section of the graveyard as well. The China Expeditionary Force, I think this might be it. Let's take a look around. You can see that this main tomb is surrounded by these plaques on the side. They might all be smaller tombs. I'm going to try and see if any of them are related to Myitkyina. I'm going to use my translation app to see what this says. This is it. I found the link between the bodies and the China Expeditionary Force here. This plaque says the remains of the officers and men of the China Expeditionary Force, which were moved and reburied here on the 14th of September 2011. Killed in action in the Myitkyina battle in Burma in August 1944, were originally buried at a graveyard which is now a middle school. So the school was a graveyard, not an unmarked mass grave. What had happened to the rest of the bodies? I went back to speak with the museum curator. Taking a look around outside, it seems like there's not that many remains of the troops from Medina that got repatriated here. What happened to the rest?
In the two expeditions, there were lots of deaths, especially during the first expedition, when they lost the troops from the new 22nd and 96th Divisions, who retreated to Savage Mountain. Most bodies were lost, so this is a huge regret.
I'd solved who the dead were in the school, but now an even more shocking tale. The mystery of two lost brigades on Savage Mountain. It seemed like there was a lost army still out there to find. The museum curator put me in touch with an expert on the Chinese Expeditionary Force. He had been searching for fallen Chinese soldiers for over 20 years. If anyone knew why the soldiers of the new 22nd and 96th Divisions couldn't be found, it was him.
I'm specifically looking into the new 22nd and the 96th Divisions, the ones that apparently got lost in Savage Mountain. What happened to them? Where are their remains?
According to the records, about 20,000 entered Savage Mountain, and when they emerged, there were only about 2,000 left.
Ge Shuya explained why in the First Burma campaign, the soldiers had entered Savage Mountain. By May 1942, the Japanese advance had cut off the Yunnan-Burma road, the remaining forces' retreat route to China. In the aftermath, 2 units ended up retreating into the jungles of Savage Mountain.
How come their remains can't be found?
Without an exact location, it's incredibly hard to know where to find them. I fear the failure of the Chinese soldiers in taking that path means that we will never find a single body.
I was finding it hard to understand how they couldn't find this many lost soldiers.
People said the place was haunted. Actually, I think that means the dead soldiers from the Chinese Expeditionary Forces wanted to come back home. There's an old saying in China, fallen leaves return to their roots. After a person dies, they have to go back to their hometown.
It seems so many soldiers suffered protecting China's lifeline to the West, especially the Lost Army. How could so many have vanished? My journey had taken me from Myanmar to China and back again. I was trying to find out what had happened to the Chinese Expeditionary Force soldiers from the new 22nd and 96th Divisions, who seemed to have mysteriously disappeared at a place known as Savage Mountain in 1942. But first, I wanted to see what it was that so many soldiers lost their lives for. This was a monument to the Yunnan-Burma Road. Looking out in the direction of modern-day Myanmar, I couldn't help but imagine being here in February 1942 and witnessing 100,000 Chinese soldiers commencing their long journey.
This is the starting point of the Yunnan-Burma Road. And you can see behind me, it's just a modern road now. And all of these people traveling up and down, they probably don't think twice about its historic significance. The only way you can tell is this monument, a simple roller in honor of the people who constructed it.
I now knew of the Chinese Expeditionary Force's heroics. I knew the start and the end of their journey. But the riddle of the Lost Army was still unresolved. How does an army get lost? How could so many have vanished? I went back to the only person I thought might have some clues. Deng, the son of the old Chinese Expeditionary Force soldier.
I can't find Savage Mountain on any maps. Could you tell me why that might be?
I don't know about Savage Mountain, but according to my father, he said Chinese soldiers went to the middle of the Hukong Valley. There were so many soldiers who died there. We feel very sorry for them.
I found the Hukong Valley, the location known by the Chinese as Savage Mountain. It was further north from Magina, in the dense jungles of the Kachin Hills.
The jungle definitely sounds rough, but I think I'm going to have to go in person to see if there's anything I can find, any signs of what happened to the Lost Army.
I headed out. I wasn't sure what I would find at the Hukong Valley, but I wanted to explore the area where the Lost Army vanished from history. The Chinese dubbed the region Savage Mountain after the primitive tribes who called the jungles home. Up until the middle of the 20th century, they were still said to be practicing the ancient tradition of headhunting.
Let me get rid of these big red ants.
Ow. Spikes. This jungle sucks. It's obvious why so many people died here, between the malarial mosquitoes and the bugs, the fire ants, the thorny plants, the heat, the humidity, the sliding around on slippery rocks. And yet there's no evidence of military activity. I'm not seeing any casings, shells, no human remains, thankfully. It's still a mystery as to what happened here.
The unforgiving jungle route had offered no fresh leads to my investigation. I resumed the search for details on the missing soldiers.
I haven't been able to find anything that links the new 22nd Division or the 96th Division of the Chinese Expeditionary Forces to a battle in Savage Mountain or anywhere in the Hukong Valley. But there is an article here about soldiers from the division that were commemorated in China. There was a statue made of someone named Liu Guiying, and it was a woman. She was one of the few female members of the new 22nd Division, and she's still alive. In fact, only one of a handful that made it out of Savage Mountain.
I had found a survivor. I hoped she would be able to tell me what had happened to the Lost Army. The Hukong Valley, known by the Chinese as Savage Mountain. This dense jungle region in the far north of Myanmar was said to be the final resting place of many thousand Chinese soldiers who had disappeared in 1942. I had set up a meeting with one of the few who had made it out alive. I hoped she could tell me what had really happened.
我们打铜鼓的时候啊，210打正面，220打正面。铜鼓战败之后，我们无路回归进入岩上。
What did the troops go through while they were retreating in the mountain?
遇到的灾难罄竹难书，太多太多了。那。 一个是饥饿，这个饥饿没得吃，没得吃，怎么呢？我们满身都有麻烦，打在你身上，就在满身爬，在满身爬，腿上、小腿、大腿爬。
And what happened next?
我们已经走了有个把多月了，死亡呢？ 也一天一天的增加， 这个死亡、饿死、病死的无药无良，在人人上呢所遇到的苦、遇到的灾、遇到的难，我永远都记得。
Liu Guiying's story was heartbreaking, but the most tragic part of it, it wasn't the initial battle that proved to be most deadly, but the journey home.
My investigation and journey had revealed a forgotten conflict hidden from the history books, and an army trying to be remembered 70 years later. I headed back to Tak Kong High School for a final visit. I'd been told there was something I should see. A team was working to uncover remains from the graveyard I now knew the school was built over. I spoke with one of the volunteers.
So could you please tell me what's going on here? So the bodies will be given a proper burial in China.
Witnessing the bones of Chinese soldiers being excavated felt like a missing piece of the story had been fixed into place. As I watched a ceremony for the World War II dead conducted by Deng and the fellow descendants of Chinese soldiers, I thought back over my journey. I had explored the story of the Chinese Expeditionary Forces in Burma. They had fought with courage, only to have many of their war graves built over. Others had died in the jungle, without a stone to mark their names. But I'd found out they had never been forgotten.
This monument is dedicated to the Chinese Expeditionary Forces, giving them recognition for the crucial role they played during World War II. And for the remains of the soldiers that had stayed behind for so long, now they're being excavated, identified, and sent back to China for proper burial. So for some of the Lost Army at least, they're finally going home.